All right, week 2. So let's talk about week 1 as we transition to week 2, and then I'll give you some focal points to focus on to maximize the points that you earn this week. So last week was basically get our feet a little wet, being exposed to what a rhetorical analysis is. My experience teaching for 22 years is that sometimes people arrive in a college composition class never talking about rhetoric or having written a rhetorical analysis. So the idea is set the stage. What is it? Look at the rhetorical techniques handout for what are the main ideas when it comes to rhetorical analysis. So purpose, audience, credibility, logical and emotional appeals. Can we get that at a basic level? And then can we then go a little deeper to look at some of the sentence level stuff, like I gave examples of rhetorical questions, hypophora, enumeratio, things like that. So if you did the week 1 work, you were able to see how a rhetorical analysis works by looking at the Google Slides for the Nancy Mayer's disability text, try to apply some rhetorical techniques to Pamela Paul's essay, and then talk about the two together. Now we're moving over to setting the stage for the rhetorical analysis essay that you're going to write. So the 2 texts this week, one is Why Are the Poor Blamed and Shamed for Their Deaths by Barbara Ehrenreich, and the other is Why AI Isn't Going to Make Art by Ted Chiang. I'm asking you to read both. The point of reading both is that you'll have an idea what both are about, and then you get to choose at that point which one you want to focus on for the remainder of part 1 of the assignment, the number 1 activity. So then there's an A, B, C, and D. So if I pick the Barbara Ehrenreich text for A, I'm just going to discuss it. And it says, this should include an identification and explanation of Ehrenreich's main argument. So purpose, what is the main point that she's making? And you're going to include one quote from the article with a proper parenthetical citation. What I would recommend is going down to D and making the works cited entry. So I give you the web address to both articles. That's important because that's where, the web address is included in a works cited entry. And also it's going to give you the information that you need to make the works cited entry. So I give you an example of Cornelia Dean's Executive on a Mission Saving the Planet from the New York Times. Just to walk you through, that is a sample works cited entry of an article from an online magazine or newspaper, which is exactly what Ted Chiang's piece is, which is from the New Yorker, and Barbara Ehrenreich's article, which is from the Guardian. So those are both online newspaper magazines. There's one author. And if you notice, Cornelia Dean's name is written Dean, Cornelia. So you would write Chiang, Ted, or Ehrenreich, Barbara. The title of the article goes in quotation marks. The title of the online magazine or newspaper is italicized. You write the day, month, year. May, and months like that, like April, that are shorter, you don't abbreviate, but if it's like February, if it's December, September, you would abbreviate that and put a period. Like December would just be capital D and then EC period. And then you give the web URL and then the date that you accessed it. So if it was today, that would be May 13th. So you would put accessed 13 May 2025. So this is also to get you in the habit of the next part, which is when you write the rhetorical analysis essay, you're going to quote from the article, which means you're going to have a works cited page, which means you're going to have quotes with parenthetical citations, which is a bridge assignment towards the argumentative research essay, which, if you remember the video I recorded for assignment 1, you're going to do research. Your credibility is going to come from your research, which means you're going to have a works cited page that has multiple works, all different types, just not online magazine or newspaper articles. Could be a video, could be a TED Talk, could be a podcast, could be a journal article from UC's database, a scholarly article that comes from an online database. So how do you do those things? That's what you're going to learn in this class too, how to get comfortable with figuring out what kind of source you have and then what's the format to put the information in. But again, let's go back to the assignment. I would do D first because you're going to make the works cited entry for the article that you choose. That's D. A, you're going to discuss the article, maybe the purpose, the main argument, what it's about, and you have to quote from the article. And one thing that you can't do without a works cited entry is come up with a parenthetical citation. So if it is an online newspaper or magazine article like both Einreich's and Chang sources, there's no page numbers. You don't give paragraph numbers. MLA 9, we're a Modern Language Association, edition 9 is the most up to date. You would only give a paragraph number for an online text if the text itself is numbered. So really what you're going to do is put the author's last name after the quote in parentheses. So you'd have the quote from Einreich and then in parentheses Einreich, period. The period always goes after the parentheses. How do you kind of work that into your head? If you put the period before the parentheses, you're literally saying that the parentheses goes with the next sentence. It's telling us information about the quote. So quote, parentheses, then period. Einreich or Chang would be what you would put there. Now you also, and I give the sample, do what's called an identifying tag, which I like to tell classes when we're working in person. It's kind of like putting a luggage tag on a piece of luggage. Think about the quote as that piece of luggage and you're attaching a tag to it. If what you would put in the parentheses is Einreich, and you say, according to Einreich, or Einreich states, and then you give the quote, you have no need for the parenthetical citation. So what we call that is quote variety, integration variety. They're different ways, so you're not just plopping a quote in there with parentheses every time. And as we work towards the argumented research essay, you also see me push you and make comments about giving some contextual background information about the author to establish credibility so that your reader doesn't have to go do the research themselves. Why should I trust Einreich? Why should I trust Ted Chiang? Right? So you can incorporate some of that in to establish the source's credibility, then give the quote, okay? So that's D, that's A. B is to identify Einreich's or Chang's purpose and potential audiences. Potential audience cannot be general. You can't just say everyone. So one thing you could do is look at The Guardian, which Einreich was writing through, and maybe look at what their demographic is, because their demographic, their readers, there's a reason they're publishing Einreich's article, because they think it would appeal to their readers. You also can look for clues in the article itself, like Barbara Einreich does identify at different points in the writing her audience because of the way or who she's talking to. And then C, I evaluate Einreich or Chang's balance of logical and emotional appeals. Explain. You would have to give an example of his use, like if you're talking about Chang, his use of logical appeals, his facts and statistics, give an example. His use of emotional appeals, places where he's using emotional language or personal anecdotes or hypothetical examples that are not tied to research, to try to draw some emotion from you. And then think about, is he more logic-based or more emotion-based? Same with Einreich. So remember, you're picking one and then you're doing A, B, C, and D just for that one. That's part one. You're going to use one of those then for your essay. So read both, decide which one you like the best, or, I know how school is, which one's the least painful for you to write about, and then do that for activity one, setting the stage for writing the draft on that article. And then part two is to watch or read the text of the speech of David McCullough Jr. If you're not familiar with David McCullough Sr., David McCullough Sr. is a very well-respected Pulitzer Prize-winning historian. His son is an English teacher, and he went viral when he gave a commencement speech at the high school he teaches at, and it's called "You Are Not Special." And obviously the tagline makes it seem like he's being derogatory towards students, but he's not. He's actually making a point, and he has a good use of humor and logical and emotional appeals. And so I want you to watch that or read the text so that you have more exposure to doing rhetorical analysis. And this is a good example. So you can tell he is definitely someone who put a lot of time and effort into crafting the speech, and it warrants us picking it apart to put it back together to look at what he does. So I'm asking you, what's his main argument? And then tone. I give you a tone handout. So adjectives describe tone. It's the speaker's feelings towards the subject matter. Whereas you probably have heard mood, if you remember your high school English classes when you're reading a novel or a poem, is the emotional atmosphere of a piece of writing. Tone is the emotion that the speaker or the narrator, or if it's a nonfiction piece, the writer feels, the author, towards the subject matter. So how does his tone shift throughout the speech? Tone could be serious, could be somber, could be chastising, could be humorous, entertaining, ironic, jocular. Look at the handout and that'll give you an idea of kind of the words you could choose from. It's like a big word bank. Imagine you were in the audience of McCullough's graduation speech. How would your reaction change if you were a fellow faculty member, so another teacher on the staff listening to his commencement speech? So you would write about that. A parent of a student at McCullough School, how would you feel if you're a parent sitting in the audience and a student of McCullough? So what I'm really trying to do is have you imagine, hypothesize, you're a member of the audience, and how do different audiences react to the same material? Because part of a rhetorical analysis is to consider audience and how effective the piece of writing is, or the speech is, to reaching that audience, to persuade them or inform them, or persuade them, to entertain them, inform them, persuade them, or two or all three of those things, and then evaluate his balance of emotional and logical appeals. That's it. That's your assignment for this week. 375 words minimum for activity 1 and 375 words minimum for activity 2. Remember, those are the bare bones, basic minimum. If you are good at communicating concisely and clearly exactly what you want to say to answer those questions, you're probably going to write more, and that's okay. What you want to worry about is not whether I'm hitting the word count, because you will no matter what. There are enough pieces there that you'll hit it, but the question is whether you're going to stop or you're going to keep going to address all parts of each prompt. You need to address all parts or you're going to lose points. And then at the bottom it says begin to plan and write your rhetorical analysis essay. So if you look ahead to assignment number 3, you are going to write the rhetorical analysis essay, which is going to be between 1,200 to 1,550 words in length. There's more than enough for you to reach that threshold. So one thing to think about, how well do you know rhetorical analysis after this week, heading towards the rough draft? And do you need to go back through the Google Slides for the Nancy Mayer's text? When you're crafting your rhetorical analysis rough draft, I would look back at those slides for the example of the thesis statement. And look at my comments week to week. Am I pointing things out that maybe you're not seeing? Am I pushing you in directions that you didn't think about, so that you're better able to score well on the draft as we move towards that major first assignment? And that's it. And if you have any questions or concerns, make sure you raise your hand by sending me an email. So face-to-face class, it's very easy. It's one of the benefits of a face-to-face class. In the moment you're confused, you can ask the question. It's better to be proactive in an online class, and if you come across something that makes you, wonder, shoot me an email, and that way you get the response in time to make the changes before you turn something in. All right? So We're still at the start of the semester, so here's to a good start, here's to a good week, and I look forward to reading what you come up with.